Family Misadventures Book 1. Welcome to the Parent of an Alien Hedgehog Club, Chapter 21. Even though he normally was not a night person, Wade stayed up until nearly midnight that night watching TV and scrolling on his phone. Since he had grounded both his kids from electronics, it felt wrong to watch when they were awake. Forcing them to leave the room just so he could indulge just seemed mean. Episode after episode, he kept telling himself just one more and then he'd go to bed. He yawned hard, wondering if he could manage to sleep in the next morning or not when he heard footsteps, standing in the hallway with Shadow, all wrapped up in a massive blanket that was dragging behind him on the floor. Wade switched off the TV.
What are you doing up? I thought you were already asleep.
I couldn't sleep.
Shadow said, taking that as an invitation to join him on the couch.
That and Silver snoring.
Wade put his chin in the palm of one hand and yawned again, noticing how Shadow sat on the other end. Unlike Silver, who seemed to want affection literally almost all the time, Shadow only wanted it in very specific intervals, and this didn't seem like one of those.
Well, you're not going to be able to sleep if you're out here talking to me.
I know.
Shadow said. He folded his legs under him and arranged the blanket so only his head was visible, looking like a little wrapped-up burrito.
I wanted to ask you something.
This was not what Wade wanted to be doing at the moment. Although he was a bit curious, he also had given Shadow a key, but unlike Silver, Shadow just took it and said things without any fuss.
Is it an important question, or is it just because you don't want to be in bed?
It's important. You said to come talk to you if something was upsetting us, and something kind of is.
Okay.
He didn't say that taking your phone wasn't allowed, and you said you didn't think you needed to, but I didn't know. I was upset for a long time yesterday because I didn't know what else wasn't allowed.
Wade spent a quick second sorting through those two statements.
Were you upset because you felt you learned afterwards that you had broken a rule? Or because you felt that you could do something wrong at any time without knowing it?
Mostly the second one, but a little of the first one too.
Okay, we can fix that tomorrow and talk about all the house rules so you know and are aware for the future.
Can we do it now?
No, I think we should have Silver with us when I do, so he knows too, because otherwise I'll have to explain them all to him separately, and that's not very efficient.
Wade watched Shadow for a moment as the hedgehog nodded and slid down slightly onto the couch, making himself comfortable.
I want to ask you something. When you go quiet, do you do it because you don't want to talk, or because you feel like you physically can't talk at the moment?
It's both.
Can you explain?
The darker hedgehog pulled one arm free and then the other from his blanket wrapping to tap his finger against the arm of the couch.
Sometimes I don't feel like talking, so I don't. But sometimes if I'm upset or if there's people I don't know or the words just want to stay inside my throat and won't come out.
That was fairly interesting.
Okay, I appreciate you telling me, and that you were upset about that yesterday. That's really good, buddy. I'm proud of you. But for now, I'm ready to go to bed and you need to go back to bed. You want a hug before you go?
Shadow shook his head.
Not right now.
He carefully slid off the couch and took a moment to adjust the blanket so he could walk without tripping.
Hey, Dad?
Yes?
There was a melting softness in those red eyes, close to admiration.
I'm really glad I knocked on the window that night.
In spite of how tired he was, something warm bloomed in Wade's chest, and he took an extra moment to smile down at his son.
Me too.
Caitlin offered up a friendly smile when she saw Wade walk into the station the next afternoon.
You know, for someone who is supposed to be on vacation, you sure do stop by a lot.
He returned her a smile. He liked the young woman who worked up front. When Tom had hired her a few years ago, a girl fresh out of college, he had secretly been concerned that she couldn't handle it or would be extremely immature. But she proved him wrong and had proven herself reliable and worked hard.
Tell me about it. I promised Tom to stop by if he needed help while he's running everything on his own. Plus, I think I left something on my desk. How's everything here?
Thankfully pretty slow. Where are those cute kids of yours?
Wade jerked a thumb over his shoulder.
In the car. I kinda can't leave them at home by themselves right now.
Caitlin made a humming noise as she peered out the window, clearly trying to catch a glimpse of them.
If you can't, then what are you going to do when you come back to work?
He paused as he had been wondering the same thing for the past 2 days. His second week of this mini vacation was almost up, and he would need a solution soon.
I don't know. Do you know anyone who's good with kids and is available to watch too for at least a few months?
I'll do it.
Full time on top of this job?
Oh, yeah. Well, I do know someone. Have you met my friend Melissa?
Immediately, Wade could picture the young woman with purple hair. She stopped by the stations a few times to talk to Caitlin. He hadn't said much to her beyond basic greetings, but she had seemed nice enough.
Yeah?
She used to be a nanny. She's working on her bachelor's degree at the moment. I do know she wants to do some part-time work. I could ask her and see if she's interested.
Does she know they're not human children?
She's met Sonic, so no worries there. I don't know if she knows about your two, but she thought Sonic was super cute, and yours are super adorable. I'll ask her if she's interested. I'll have her give you a call.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Wade said. Outside, he heard the loud roar of a motorcycle and turned to see one pulling up in front of the station.
Hi, Maddie.
Hey, Wade.
Silver jumped out of Wade's car and came toward her, Shadow following him slowly. She instead smiled at them.
You guys like my bike?
Where did you get it?
Can I look at it?
Same place we got my car from. And only if your dad's okay with it.
Both of them turned to look at him with pleading expressions.
Sure, but look with your eyes and not your hands or psychokinesis.
He added, not wanting to be responsible if either of them damaged her clearly very expensive bike.
So, how are things going?
Couldn't be better.
He was still thinking about that phone call with Pete and what type of meeting they might have this weekend. He was already being manipulative. Wade didn't want to know if he might ramp it up to even more. Not to mention what he was going to do with his kids while he was dealing with Pete.
What are you up to?
Just bringing Tom his dinner. He forgot it again. Also, I thought Sonic was behind me. But I guess he went running off in the other direction.
Makes sense.
Wade? Is he limping?
Shadow froze in his admiration of her motorcycle, turning to look at the two of them, looking both aghast and slightly frightened.
No.
He said, answering her question himself. Wade sighed.
He's been doing that on and off for a while.
That made Maddie scrunch up her nose in a frown.
Can I have a look?
The dark hedgehog took a step back, if he expected an attack.
I'll let you sit on my bike.
Wade was impressed by how easily she managed that, when he hadn't even been able to get that far for over 2 weeks. She lifted Shadow up so he was sitting on the seat of her motorcycle, and then leaned down to peer at his ankle.
So, where does it hurt?
Ducking his head, Shadow only made a brief sweeping motion to the joint socket of his ankle mutely.
He said he broke it a while ago and sometimes it still bothers him.
I'd like to get an x-ray to see what's wrong.
Shadow looked up at Wade, silently pleading. He was calm, but Wade could see the panic starting to build in his eyes. Without hesitation, Wade moved toward him, putting an arm around his small shoulders, a small but silent way of promising protection.
He's very hesitant about that.
Wade said, knowing Shadow wouldn't want all the details of what previously happened to him to be put out into the open. The look Thani gave him reminded Wade of his mother.
If he's walking around on an injured ankle, he could be doing more damage to his foot, especially if it's been untreated for so long.
That was a good point. It literally meant prioritizing either his mental health or his physical health. Wade glanced down and looked at Shadow for a moment.
She's right, bud. What if we just go in and get an x-ray that's taking a picture of your foot? No one will touch you or hold you down. You just lay on a table for literally a minute. It takes a picture, and then you're done. I'll be there the whole time.
Shadow visibly shrank, if trying to make himself smaller and invisible. He shut his eyes, but gave one small, curt nod. That seemed to be good enough for Maddie.
So when can you make it over to the clinic?
Are you busy right now?
Give me 20 minutes and I'll meet you over there.
By the time Maddie pulled up to the clinic with Sonic behind her, Wade was deeply relieved. Shadow had been silent and trembling for the past 10 minutes, and Wade knew that forcibly carrying him or holding him down to do this would make it worse. It had to be his own choice to walk in there.
You want to take some deep breaths with me?
No.
Well, I'm a bit stressed out. It would help me feel better. Just one long, deep breath in and then out.
He did that a few times, visibly relieved when he saw Shadow copying him.
There you go. It's going to be all right.
Maddie took charge instantly before she even unlocked the door.
Blueberry, you and Silver want to stay out in the waiting room while we take care of this?
Okay, so I gotta show you the new comic books I just got.
He waved several in the air, already going over to one of the chairs. Wade met her eyes over the kids' heads.
Can you get everything set up and ready so he can literally be in and out? It needs to be really fast.
Sure thing, Wade.
She said and went to disappear into the back of the clinic. There was a tug on the bottom of his coat, and Wade glanced down to see Shadow staring up at him, deeply worried.
I don't want to do this anymore. Can't we just go home?
His words were so soft, Wade could barely hear them, curling at the end like a puppy's tail.
Soon, it will be really quick and it won't hurt.
When that didn't get a response, he knelt down.
Hey, I won't let anything or anyone hurt you. I promise. Just trust me. It will be a quick picture so Maddie can see why your ankle hurts. Then we can go.
When Shadow's gaze slid away, Wade continued.
It's going to be okay. I will never let anything happen to you.
You can't. It already happened.
Shadow said far too gloomily for a child his age to sound like. As soon as she came back, he offered Shadow his hand and walked with him into the back.
Don't look.
Wade said, trying to use his own body to block out certain things that could frighten him even more. They settled him onto the table in the X-ray room, and Wade moved away from him, trying not to notice the way Shadow's head shot up when he did.
I'll be right here.
He promised and nodded to Maddie. As soon as it was done, Wade had the biggest smile he could on his face.
All done. You can go back to the car if you want. I'll be there in a minute.
He had fully expected Shadow to bolt like he did last time, just take off like he did before and go hide in the back of his car again. To Wade's complete and utter surprise, he didn't. Wade was extremely proud of him, knowing what he had done hadn't been easy for him. Instead of running away, Shadow just joined Silver and Sonic in the waiting room, sitting next to them as they pored over those comic books. It made Wade smile. Those kids deserve to feel safe and secure enough to actually act like kids. He could have stood there for a very long time just watching, if it hadn't been for Maddie. He glanced up when she came out of her office, calling his name.
Good news?
You're not going to like this.
How bad is it?
He asked as he followed her into the office, a small but cozy room. Her desk was nearly covered in pictures of her, Tom, and Sonic doing various things. She sat down and pulled up an X-ray on her computer, all the tiny bones of Shadow's foot glowing on the screen.
Actually, not bad at all. His foot is perfectly fine.
Wait, what?
Look, everything looks fine. Absolutely perfect. There's no evidence that he ever broke his ankle. I don't see any issues with the bone, the cartilage, or the ligaments, or anything.
Are you sure? What if it fully healed between then and now?
I'd usually see some evidence of the original injury, and it's not there.
Okay, did Tom tell you about him being in suspended animation for several decades? Would that have any influence on this or how it could have healed?
He has, but I'm afraid I have no idea.
So that means there's a possibility he broke his foot and while in suspended animation and healed so perfectly that there's no trace of it, maybe?
Possibly, or it never even happened. There's no physical evidence it happened, and it only bothers him sometimes. Shadow's young and healthy. It should have healed quickly, and it's very unlikely that he would be experiencing arthritis. Not to mention, let's say he did break it. How long after that did he go into suspended animation?
Not that long.
If they didn't set the bone properly before that, then there's a chance it could have healed wrong. But it didn't. His foot's fine.
So if it never happened, why would he limp? Every time I pointed it out, He tries to hide it. He's not doing it for attention.
I have no idea. It's just a guess, or it could be some psychomatic injury, one that's not related to an actual injury, but instead comes from trauma and is manifesting into physical pain. But I don't know very much about that. It's extremely rare in animals.
Looking towards the door, Wade could hear all three of the boys in the waiting room, most likely still talking about comic books. They sounded happy. He thought of the papers from the files he had gotten, tucked away safely in his bedroom, back at the house.
Let me do some research about his past, and I'll get back to you. Thanks for doing this.
No problem, Wade. You take care. Hope you figure it out.
On the drive home, Wade snuck glances in the rearview mirror. Both boys were clutching a comic book that Sonic had loaned them, staring at the pages in what could only be described as wide-eyed reverence.
Shadow, how's your foot feeling?
Fine. Hey Silver, look at how he fights.
What kind of weapon is that?
I'm not sure.
What are you guys reading?
Technically, they were mostly just looking at the pictures, but he decided to call it reading anyway.
Batman? He's this cool guy who dresses like a bat, and him and his family fight bad guys. He has a bunch of kids, and they all fight crime together. Hey Dad, if you got superpowers, we could do that.
It took a lot of effort for Wade to not reveal his true feelings about that statement.
Maybe.
He said, turning onto their street.
When we get home, how about you guys spend a few minutes on some worksheets? The more you do it, it will make reading the comics easier.
Can we have a stack first?
Wade glanced at the clock, weighing the decision since dinner wasn't too far off versus having to deal with hungry kids.
Yeah, but just a small one, like a piece of fruit. I'm going to start cooking dinner soon.
He said as he pulled into the garage and shut off the car. As soon as they were both settled in and started on their worksheets, Wade went and locked himself into his room so he could read through those papers to try and figure this out. He didn't know if the professor guy would have included it in his notes, but a major injury like a broken ankle should have merited something. To his surprise, he couldn't find the papers. The last time he had gone through them, he had put them back in their envelope and put the envelope in his nightstand drawer just for safekeeping. Probably wasn't the best hiding spot, but it was all he could think of on a short notice. But now, the envelope was no longer there. Wade searched his entire room for 10 minutes, nearly emptying his closet, looking under the bed, behind the dresser, and everywhere else he could think of, and still came up empty. It had vanished, or someone had taken it. Trying not to get excited, he came back to the living room. Silver and Shadow were still at the table, both eating grapes. Shadow was working diligently on his worksheet, but Silver was playing with his pencil.
Were either of you in my room?
No.
Wade took a deep breath and sat down.
I'm not mad, but some papers that were in my room disappeared, and I really need them back. If you took them, just give them back. No punishment. Just please be honest and give them back.
Both of them stared back at him blankly. Wade held that gaze for a moment, looking for hints of nervousness or guilt, but got nothing, just confusion. Unless one of them was far more accomplished liar than he was aware of, they had to be telling the truth.
What papers are they?
Don't worry about it.
Wade muttered, standing up to drift into the kitchen, not taking his own advice in the slightest.